Hey, welcome back to JG3 Reviews. My name is James, and I like to do ink and paper and fountain pen reviews. And today it is an ink. Today I have Monteverde, and these are two very simple words, but I grew up in Texas, and there are things we have trouble with. And one of them is French, and the other is just, English. And this is Azure Noir, or Azure Noir, or Azure Noir. I have no idea how you want me to say this, so pick one of those, and probably the fourth option. Anyway, as the name implies, this is a dark blue ink, and for me, dark and blue, that's always great. So I'm going to tell you what I like and I don't like about the ink. We'll do an ink test and a chromatography and all of that good stuff. Let's flip that camera and dive right in. So let's look at this on Rhodia paper first. This is with a glass dip pen. I classify this as a broad, and it's also quite wet here at the very beginning. You notice that there is some nice shading with that larger glass dip pen writing tip than you get with this fine, although even with the Jinhao fine, you can see that there is some nice shading. Both of these, of course, writing pretty nice and wet with this ink. This writing here too, you can also see some shading, and that's what I was hoping for when I got it. It's kind of a really dark slate with black, gray, and blue. Now my experience with Monteverde inks has really been quite good. I did get one of those ink bottles back when they had a little bit of a fungicide issue, so I hear those people talking already. I've been there. But in general, I've got good experience, and they tend to be well-behaved inks. There's the first pass, and there you really start to see the blue tint to that. Let me go back over here on one side. And then a little bit darker there. Now it writes, as you can see, let me bring that back down, with that broader glass nib, it's darker. So the wetter it is, the darker it will be. Is that like a law of inkage? What is that? I think that's pretty standard operating procedure. Now, as you can see here on this ink swatch, you kind of get a better picture of the shading that happens. This is all here in smaller scale on these numbers and letters, but this illustrates it a bit better for the camera. And you get some really nice variation out of this ink. Now, it's not variation of color and so much as it just is shading. I would consider this one to be business friendly. It's not a documental ink, as we will see here, so use that accordingly, but it is pretty business and school friendly. Now let's do the quick dry test. For this, I'll be using the Jinhao in the fine. And I didn't wait for that at all. Let's try that again. It's supposed to wait 5 seconds, man. Okay, this is the real 5 seconds. I'm just going to put an X through that so you don't look at that. That's the 1 second. Let's try the 10. Okay, there's 10 seconds. 15 seconds. Quite dry there. And 30 seconds. Still fairly dry. And after 1 minute, no problem whatsoever, completely dry. All right, how about the water fastness test? I always love this one. We're just going to go to town. It's wet and rainy outside this week. All right, I've let that sit for a few minutes. Let's dab that and see how it did. Wow. Gotta say, better than I would have expected. Certainly, you would be able to read this after that amount of water exposure, and I'm going to say probably about 3 minutes of water exposure. No problem whatsoever. Flipping the paper over, we see that the only bleed-through problem I had with this ink on Rhodia paper was where I did the ink drying test. Oddly enough, not on the water fastness test, except for just couple of small dots, little micro dots there. The ink swatch, no issue whatsoever. The normal writing, no issue whatsoever. I would consider this quite a well-behaved ink, and I like it. And good shading and better water fastness than I would have expected. You'd definitely be able to read that and maybe salvage something from that, and that's good to know. For variety's sake, here it is on Tomoe paper. This is a Lockby sample pad, and this is the old Tomaway paper, so kind of keep that in mind. I know there's a little bit of difference there, but it performs really nice, and you see that shading maybe even a bit more defined there than on the Rhodia paper. Monteverde is an American company, but their inks are made in Europe. And just in case you're curious, this is how it performed in that same Jinhao pen on a Yush paper from India. I think that looks good, and kind of the gray comes through in the writing just a little bit more. And then I thought you might want to know about a budget notebook. This is a composition notebook from an office supply store. This is the Vietnamese paper that is so popular. You can get it at CVS, Staples, Walmart, lots of places, and it shows up quite nicely on this paper as well. No bleed through or ghosting issues there, and you still get that variation, so looks good. And then I know some of you really enjoy a good chromatography, so of course we had this. This is on calligraphy paper from Daiso. I will do a how-to on how to do chromatography sometime in the next month or so. So you have here the heart of the matter is, of course, that black, which is not very dark, so it's kind of a dark gray black. And then, like a lot of black inks, you have a bit of a yellow tinge. I find that fascinating, and I have since I was a kid. Old Papermate ballpoint pens used to do their own. They were self-chromatizing, or whatever you want, whatever the word for that would be. If you left your homework for too long, years later, you'd come back and find that you had black writing surrounded by a baby diarrhea yellow ick around the ink, and so that's just a factor of some black inks. Then you get what is a really nice shade of blue to give it that hint of blue. There's not a lot of it there. Goes into even just a little bit of pinkish hue right in there. Kind of an interesting chromatography for what is a very basic dark blue-black or black-blue. All right, I hope you enjoyed that ink. If you have any experiences with this, or if you have a recommendation of an ink that is similar to this that somebody might like to try, share that in the comments below. God bless you, and have a great week.